Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and today I am asking the question, should we ensure a former leader's right of expression on social media? Obviously, this goes to the various platforms, but I thought this would be actually really interesting because, as you know, whether you're in the United States or not, we are going through a rather interesting election right now that is yet to be called. We don't necessarily know who's going to win right now, but I think this question is relevant because at the moment it appears that Vice President Biden has the upper hand, which means he may win this election, which means in January, when he is sworn in as the next president, President Trump then becomes Citizen Trump. And I thought this was really interesting about his online protection. And this is coming from news outlet The Independent. And I think it's actually an important one as we look to the future. Now, obviously, he may win the presidency and go on for the next 4 years. But assuming he doesn't, and assuming in January, President Trump becomes Citizen Trump, I think a lot of things may actually happen, and I'd be very curious to know everybody's thoughts on this. Now, I also think this dovetails with an article that I wrote that just got published today regarding misinformation in this election. Obviously, when you have anything that's really contentious like this, there's going to be information, good, bad, half true, fully true, whatever it is, or completely untrue, that flies around out there. And some of the biggest rumors or accusations or arguments that I've seen, I wanted to actually spell out in my article and say, this is the data behind it. Here are the actual numbers. Here's the science. Here's the logic. And you can make up your own mind at that point. But here's what I'm thinking. But I think this dovetails because Donald Trump, as obviously Citizen Trump in January, if he loses, could be removed from Twitter after he leaves office if he continues to break the platform's rules. And this is according to Twitter's policy regarding public figures and confirmed by a Twitter spokesperson. Now, his account has been flagged 7 different times between Wednesday and Thursday here in the United States for posting basically what Twitter believes is misinformation and misleading claims about the election that he is currently embattled in at the moment. Now, on top of this, and I found this to be really interesting, several prominent Democrats, that would be the opposition party to Donald Trump's Republican Party, called for Twitter to actually suspend the president's account until all of the states have actually finished counting their votes. However, Twitter's platform's public interest guidelines actually prevent them from suspending or removing the sitting president of the United States. Now, after his lead in several key states began to, basically that gap began to close, and the challenger, Vice President Joe Biden, started overtaking him, basically President Trump started calling for a halt of the counting for mail-in ballots in some states. In other states where he had a lead, he obviously was asking to count. It's very selective. That's a political tactic. We expect these kinds of things in elections, so there you go. But the rate of violations that he had on Twitter would have led to an account suspension, whether it was temporary or permanently on Twitter, typically. However, public figures are protected by, and I quote, public interest exception policies at Twitter because he is an elected leader. Now, the policy states, and I quote, "We recognize that sometimes it may be in the public interest to allow people to view tweets that would otherwise be taken down. We consider content to be in the public interest if it directly contributes to understanding or discussion of a matter of public concern." Obviously, an election where you have the president of the United States looking to get reelected and is in the middle of, obviously trying to win the thing as his challenger, Vice President Biden, this is a huge, huge thing because he can put out whatever he wants, and whether it's 100% right or 100% false, Twitter's not really going to touch it. They've been slapping warning labels on these things, but you can click view and it will show you what it's viewed. It's Twitter's way of saying, hey, we don't believe this information is correct, but we will still allow you to read this. That's not necessarily censorship so much as it is a warning, although some people have construed that as censorship, and I'm not going to get into that argument. But I find this to be actually really interesting in the sense that if he keeps up, let's say, with what Twitter believes are violations of their policy, in January, the largest platform that the president has and had prior to obviously assuming office in 2016, or the beginning of 2017 rather, is essentially Twitter. If he were to be suspended or removed from that platform, there's tens of millions of people there. And I would be curious to know what the long-term ramifications or effects of that are. There's a subset of President Trump's followers that believe he is being censored, that believe the election, for whatever reason, is being stolen. And again, I am not going to sit here and adjudicate that. I believe my job is agnostic to politics, even though we're not immune from it. And my article was essentially just talking about the data science, the numbers, and the logic behind why some of the rumors are simply not correct, or what it would take to prove them correct. But here we are. If you were to remove a future citizen Donald Trump's Twitter account, what would that actually do in terms of the population that believes that he is being censored, because he actually won the election, even though we have a new sitting president, and on and on and on? Will that actually increase violence? Will Twitter actually take that into account? Or they simply excise him from the network? And then what about Facebook or any other social media account that is out there? We're already seeing a bifurcation along political lines of social media platforms, with a lot of people staying on Facebook and Twitter. And we have a new movement going on in platforms like Parler, for example. And so I'm very curious to see what happens with that, where that goes and everything. But I'd be curious to know your thoughts on this as well. If he is violating their guidelines as a private company, Twitter has every right to do that, but should they? And I'm curious, and I honestly don't know, because I think there are ramifications both ways, to allowing somebody, let's say, to publish what the platform considers demonstrably false information, versus simply removing them, which could potentially rile up or engage or increase violence or something along those lines. So I think it's a very serious situation. I think it's a very interesting topic, and it's just now starting to be broached in the media. So there you go. That is your news of the day, and hopefully as we continue to watch the election, we will continue to have a very peaceful outcome. There's been very little unrest, and I think everybody is hoping it's going to stay that way, and so here we are. But that is your news of the day. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts, and as always, let's just keep trucking. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe and stay online. Thanks, everyone.